So what are we talking about today, you might ask? Well, we're going to be doing stuff to my video card. So here we are. Enjoyed my visit to the Natural Garage. Hey all, Jason here, and welcome back to Tech on a Budget. And today, we're going to be talking about my video card. Why I chose the video card I have, and why I did what I did to it. So give me a few minutes and I'm going to pull it out of the chassis here and we can have a better look at it. So this is my Zotac GTX 1080 Ti. Now there is some question on whether this is the AMP edition or the AMP Extreme edition. If you look at the stock cooler, this is the AMP cooler. But when I took the cooler off to put the bracket on for the cooling, I noticed that there was some differences in the PCB. The PCB matches what I can find for the AMP Extreme edition. Now, whichever edition it is, doesn't really matter to me because the difference between the two cards is only about 10% performance. So I'm not too worried about it. But to get to the crux of the matter, why did I put the Kraken bracket on so I could do water cooling? Well, a couple reasons. One is I really like water cooling. I feel like it's better than air cooling. I mean, nowadays it's not a lot better, but it is better. But the big thing is that in my current case, the power supply comes out to about here and gives about 1/4 inch between the fan and the top of the power supply. This is the fan that cools the GPU core. And with only 1/4 inch of room between the top of the power supply and the fan itself, it really chokes the fan for air. And I was seeing temperatures in the high 70s and 80s with 30 to 40% utilization on my GPU. So that's not going to cut it, because I do have a couple games that push my graphics card a little harder, and I didn't dare play them until I figured out the cooling. So in comes the NZXT Kraken G12 cooling bracket. Now it comes with the bracket and a 90mm fan, which is great. I got a Corsair H55 and it honestly fits perfectly. I'm happy with it. But although this is an excellent setup for stock clocks, you know, right out of the box video card performance, I don't think this is what I want for overclocking. And I'll tell you why. So I have a mini ITX Gigabyte board and it only has 2 fan headers, CPU and system. So all this stuff, all 3 of these, the pump and both of the fans, have to have power and have to have control. But as it sits right now, they're all pigtailed off of the system fan header. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to put a PWM adapter from the video card for the fans to control the fan on over the heat sinks or the VRMs and the fan for the radiator. Now I'm going to leave the pump on the system fan header because even with just the fans and the pump running at a constant RPM, even when I started to do a little bit of overclocking, my core was never getting over about 55 degrees. But my concern is the VRMs and the other half of the card. Now, as you can see, with the stock cooler, it's still just passive cooling. There's no contact with the cooler. So I'm not too terribly worried about cooling it, except that I don't have any control over my fan speed. So I'm going to use this adapter to plug in some PWM fans so I can control these 2 fans with the GPU according to the GPU temperature. Now I could just use this to plug in these and that would probably work fine, but without PWM control, because these aren't PWM fans, once I plug it in and power on the system, these fans are just going to run at 100%. That's it. So I bought some Noctua fans. and these are both PWM fans. One of them's 90 millimeter, one of them's 120 millimeter. So hopefully that will help us with our overclocking. I've done a bit of experimentation with overclocking with this, but I'm really worried about the VRMs not getting the cooling they need. So we get the PWM fans on here, and we can control those through the video card itself, and I think we'll get some better results. So give me a few minutes and I will put all this stuff on. Okay, so here's the finished product. So we've got the 92 millimeter fan. Sorry, I called them 90 millimeters, but they're actually 92. We've got the 120, which is not necessarily an airflow fan, but it's not necessarily a static pressure fan, but we'll see how it works. And then we've got the adapter that plugs into the fan header here. So now this should work, but I'm not entirely sure. So we're gonna put it in the computer, plug it in, and see if we have control of our fans. Okay, so here it is. We've got the card back in the case. We got the new PWM 92 millimeter fan in the bracket here. As you notice, we had to redo all of our paste, and it took me a couple tries to get it on right. And we have our new 120 millimeter fan on the radiator. Now, neither of these fans are aesthetically pleasing as the ones that came out of them, but function over form for me. As much as I would like to do black and white, I didn't want to spend the money for a particular PWM fan. Remember, this is tech on a budget, and this is definitely budget stuff. These are the two of the cheapest PWM fans I could find from a reputable manufacturer. So now that it's installed, let's power up the system and see how well we can control the fans. Okay, so we've got everything put back in the case. Everything's ready to go. It's powered up. Excuse me. I've got MSI Afterburner up here, and all I'm going to do is mess with the manual fan settings. So this slider right here, right now, it's down. What we're going to do is we're going to move it up, and we're going to listen or feel for the fans to increase in RPM. I have no idea if this is actually going to work, but it's supposed to. So we're going to move it all the way up, click it, and then we're going to feel. Oh, yeah, I can hear it and feel it. It does work. Yay! Okay, so with that, that's a little bit about my video card. That's a little bit about my setup. So I was a little concerned with the constant speed of both the pump and both of the fans for the cooling on the video card. So now we've addressed both of the fans. I'm not too terribly worried about the pump because I was never getting much over 55 degrees in the little bit of overclocking experimentation I've done so far. But now we can set our fan curve so we can actually vary the cooling, and most importantly on the VRMs, because that's what I was worried about. If you can keep your power delivery in your core cooler, you can pull more out of it. It's more efficient. So that's all I've got for now. In the next episode of Tech on a Budget, we're going to do some overclocking. We're going to start with the GPU, and maybe we'll get to the CPU. I don't know. But until then, this is Jason saying we'll see you next time.